In a narrow street filled with noise, dust, and ordinary lives, there lived a boy named Maz. His house was small, his clothes were simple, and his life was far from easy. But inside his heart lived a dream so big that it didn't match the size of his world. Maz wanted to open a restaurant. Not just any restaurant. He already knew its name, Den Macho. To others, the name sounded unusual, almost meaningless, but to Maz, it sounded like destiny. Every morning before sunrise, Maz left home to work small jobs. Sometimes he washed dishes at roadside stalls. Sometimes he carried heavy boxes for shopkeepers. Sometimes he swept floors until his hands hurt. People noticed his hard work, but when they heard his dream, they laughed. Restaurant? They mocked. You can't even afford tea for yourself. Each laugh felt like a stone thrown at his heart, but Maz never argued. He simply nodded, smiled politely, and continued working. Because deep down, he believed something most people didn't. Dreams don't need permission from reality. At night, when the world became quiet and the streetlights flickered softly, Maz climbed to the roof of his house. He would sit there for hours, staring at the sky. The stars fascinated him. They looked small, yet they shone so brightly. Sometimes doubt whispered inside him. What if they're right? What if you're just fooling yourself? What if this dream is too big for someone like you? His chest tightened with fear, and just when his hope began to fade, his mother, Asifa, she would sit beside him without saying anything at first. She understood silence. She understood struggle. She understood her son's heart better than anyone. Then she would gently say, Maz, stars look small from far away, but that doesn't mean they are small. He would look at her, and somehow his doubts would shrink. Asifa had lived a hard life herself. She had known poverty, loss, and disappointment, but she never allowed hardship to turn her bitter. Instead, she turned it into strength. She believed one thing with absolute certainty: hope is stronger than circumstance. Whenever Maz felt tired, she encouraged him. Whenever he failed, she lifted him. Whenever he doubted himself, she believed for him. She never gave him money. She couldn't, but she gave him something far more valuable: courage. After years of saving coins, real coins, not notes, Maz finally gathered enough to rent a tiny roadside stall. It was barely big enough for one person to stand in. That with shaking hands, he painted a cardboard sign, Den Macho. He hung it proudly. That night he didn't sleep. He kept imagining customers coming, smiling, tasting his food, and saying, "This is amazing." Morning arrived. He waited, and waited, and waited. No one came. The second day, one customer stopped, looked, and walked away. The third day, rain poured from the sky like the world itself had decided to test him. Mud flooded his stall, his ingredients spoiled, his stove stopped working. Everything he had saved for years, gone in one storm. Maz sat on the ground, soaked, shivering, staring at the broken pieces of his dream. His hands trembled, his throat tightened, his eyes filled with tears he tried to hide. Asifa quietly stepped into the rain and sat beside him. She didn't rush, she didn't panic, she didn't lecture him. She simply picked up the fallen signboard, wiped the mud from it with her scarf, and placed it gently into his hands. Dreams don't disappear when storms come. Only weak belief disappears. Rising again. The next morning, Maz started again. He borrowed utensils from neighbors. A friend gave him vegetables. A shopkeeper allowed him to use extra spices. His mother stayed awake all night helping him cook. Day by day, people began to notice. A man tasted his food and smiled. A child brought his friends. A worker told his coworkers. Slowly, one customer became three.
3 became 10. 10 became lines of people waiting. Not because Moz was lucky, but because he was persistent, dream fulfilled. Years later, a beautiful restaurant stood proudly on a busy street. Bright lights, warm atmosphere, laughter everywhere. Above the entrance shone a glowing sign, Den Macho Restaurant. Customers filled every table. The aroma of delicious food floated in the air. People praised the taste, the service, the atmosphere. But inside, Maz knew the truth. The restaurant wasn't built with money, it was built with hope. On the wall hung an old, muddy cardboard sign, the very first one he had painted. He kept it there so he would never forget where he started. When someone asked him his secret, Maz smiled and said, "I didn't succeed because I was strong. I succeeded because someone believed in me until I learned to believe in myself." His eyes turned to a quiet corner table. There sat Asifa, watching, smiling, proud. Final moral: the power of hope. Hope doesn't guarantee success, but without hope, success can never begin. Because hope is the voice inside you that whispers,